Hello learners, in this session we will understand the concept of organizational change to understand organizational behavior. So let's first understand what do we mean by organizational change. So change, we say that whatever is constant is change. Change we can witness every day in our lives. We see a change in how we want the companies to deliver products to us. We see a change in our taste and preferences. We see a change in our income, and this change leads to many other following changes of trying different kinds of products, trying expensive products, luxury products, spending more on extracurricular things. We see change in technology. So the outlook of the market is changing. The customer is changing. The employees are changing. So change is something which will always take place. As far as business is concerned, when there is a change in technology level, when there is a change in how businesses are done, the biggest change is e-commerce platform. Post-COVID, we have seen there were several businesses which were vanished. They disappeared from the market because they did not survive this change. Because the COVID period took a time of around 2 years, and in those years, all the businesses which did not have online presence, they could not survive. There are many industries, for example tourism industry, aviation industry, hospitality. These industries suffered huge losses during this time because travel was the one thing which was not taking place. So there were big firms which were diversified. They somehow survived that 2-3 years of period, but there were smaller firms which could not survive and they vanished from the business. So change could be sometimes the changes are favored, they are welcomed, but many changes are not welcomed. So when these multinationals are coming in India, more and more multinationals are coming towards India. So they are giving competition to the Indian origin, indigenous companies in terms of quality, quantity, variety, cost, production cost, and a new way to market the product, new way to advertise it. So this change is again triggering a favorable change for the Indian companies also. They are now focusing now to stay in competition. They have to accept this change of technology. If the phones and network companies are shifting from 3G to 5G, then these companies which are offering 2G and these handsets, these mobile phone handsets are not taking 5G network. So these companies have to change. So the organization need to change because the market is changing, because the business dynamics are changing. There are several business dynamics of 19th century, 20th century, which are completely failed in this century, in this 21st century. So how can we not study the concept of organization change? The study of organizational behavior is incomplete without understanding the organizational change. So what do we mean by the change in organization? So it refers to the setting up of new production method, producing new products, restructuring the organization, adoption of information technology, change from public to private ownership, and vice versa. Change is inevitable in the life of an individual or organization, and change results in new opportunity, challenges, and hardships. And to survive those hardships, you need to accept that change, you need to embrace that change. Modern organizations are required to compete in a global market. Further, technological developments resulted in changes in the method of producing goods and services. All these developments make changes inevitable, pervasive, and persistent in organizational life. So, in this chapter, you will understand how to manage change, what are the triggers of change, and what are the strategies to incorporate change. So, in simple words, organizational change is defined as the change in attitude, behavior, and interest of employees, rules, regulations, policies, and technological and environmental changes of an organization so that the organization align with the forces affecting the organization. One more definition. It is an ongoing process of social construction that comprises spiral pattern of discursive change and restructuring of collective meanings. Organizational change was expressed as an empirical observation of differences in form, quality, or state over time in an organizational entity. The entity may be a person's job, a work group, an organizational strategy, a product, a program, or the overall organization. Now, what is the nature of change? 1. Nature is organizational change is a continuous process. As I told you, change is constant. It is inevitable. You cannot say for first 6 months of the year the change will take place and the rest will not. No, it is a continuous process. When organization changes, it is changing all these 12 months. Then change is the element of the organization which affect the whole organization. When the change is taking place, some element of the organization may be affected more and some may be affected less. But the organization is always affected when there is a change. The aim of change is to modify or transform the organization which affect the status quo. So in order to maintain the status in the market, the companies have to change. Then change is inevitable. You cannot stop the change. It is going to take place. Sometimes the change comes from external sources which are residing outside the organization. Sometimes the changes are caused because of the internal forces. So in both the cases, change cannot be stopped. You cannot evit it. Then organization change affect the individual behavior, group behavior and management behavior. And that is the reason why we are studying this topic here in organizational behavior. That when there is a change in the organization, it affects at all three levels. Individual level, employees behavior is affected. Group level, group behavior is affected, and management behavior. Overall organization behavior is affected by organizational change. So it is essential that we study this topic to understand the organization behavior. Now, the importance of organizational change. Why it is important? 1. It maintains the trust of the organization. The ability to smoothly handle changes as they arise can build employees' trust for your organization. Employees want a workplace where drastic changes are managed very effectively and communicated transparently. So when you are introducing a change and this change is taking place very gradually and in controlled situation, so the employee trust for the organization increases. Then organizational change is responsible or it accelerates the growth of the organization. Change management helps businesses evaluate, redesign and implement new business processes. We see today that in order to compete with these online retail companies which are selling the groceries, merchandising, electronic items and other items, these traditional shop owners are now required that if they have to increase the accessibility of their business, they must come online. So organizational growth and improving the business process is a never-ending journey. Then organizational change is important because training employees organization-wide for the change. So change management involves preparing your employees for the prospect of other major or minor changes. It naturally trains them across the organization to be ready for and handle any kind of change as they come. So the organizations which have the culture of change, where employees are always ready to adapt to the change, they are the organization which see themselves in a long vision, and in long lifetime their employees will be very comfortable from traveling through these different kind of change process. Organizational change also helps in employee resistant management, because whenever there is a change, there is resistance. People resist change. No one likes change. In the beginning, this change wants us to try something new, and we have to leave our comfort and try something new. So it creates resistance. And in organization, no matter the change is for the benefit of employee, but you ask them to work in some new setting, in change setting, so they will have some little discomfort, and for that matter they will resist change. And change is always uh, uh, I would say the barrier to organizational change could be employee resistance, it could be technological constraint, budget constraint, lack of executive support, and many more reasons are there. So change management helps these managers to facilitate shift in the workplace. Cost management. Organizational change also helps in cost management because poorly managed projects can quickly exceed the planned budget, especially when they take longer than initially anticipated. Effective change management can help with cost management by anticipating and preventing any delays that may be caused by employees or leadership resistance. Employee burnout control. Low morale can be detrimental to your organization functioning and growth, especially if your employees are tired from dealing with organizational change. So, change management helps you communicate changes and roll them out smoothly so employees experience minimal disruption and understand the long-term benefits of the change. Moving ahead, let's understand what are the forces behind organizational change. So, we can say there are two categories: external and internal factors which can affect the or which can induce or trigger the organizational changes. The external factors could be technological change. See, by external factor we mean all those factors which are existing outside the company. They may be the consumers, they may be the supplier, the union, the shareholder, the government, the potential investors, and many more such factors. So, and no organization can function without these external factors. So, we have to understand these factors to understand the trigger of organizational change, because many a times the change is derives from the external factor. If the consumer is changing, your consumer demands a better camera mobile phone, they will shift from your company if you are not able to offer them that quality camera. So they will shift to some other company. So you do not want your consumer to be lost. You want to maintain that customer base. So you will now change the product functions. So all these factors affect the change in the organization. The first one is technological change. When there is a change in technology in the organization environment and other organization adopt the new technology, the organization under focus becomes less cost effective and its competitive position weakens. So it has to adopt new technology. So one change, which is technological change, which we see today, is the most important reason for organization to change. Okay, so if the technology is upgrading and your competitors are using that upgraded technology, they are somewhere better competing in the market than you. They may be, you know, using the perks of technological change in terms of reduced production cost, reduced marketing cost, increased customer base, increased market share, more products and services, more user-friendly product and service. So the perks are many. So the technological change is very important factor for organizational change. Second is change in marketing conditions. Since every organization export its output to the environment, an organization has to face competition in the market. So there may be forces which may affect the competitive position of an organization. So if market condition changes, it will have a direct impact on your organization and you need to change according to the changed market conditions. Next is social change. Now, because of several forces like level of education, urbanization, feeling of autonomy and international media impact allowed the consumer to use these new information sources, this has led to a social change. Society is changing because now society is exposed to several sources of information and it is having impact on their thought process, on their perception. So these social changes affect the behavior of the people in the organization and therefore it is required to adjust its working so that it matches people. So the concept of work from home or flexible hours is a concept of developed nations, USA, Europe, they follow this pattern. If we take a look at the government or public sector organizations in India, they do not have this concept of flexible work hours. You are strictly required to work 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 for these organizations. You cannot have flexible hours like you're going at 11 and you're coming back at 7 or 8. So when these changes from these multinationals are coming to developing nations like India, so society is also changing. So the company is now required, the companies which are here in India, indigenous companies, they need to adapt to the change because society is demanding change which they have experienced in other settings. Another one is political and legal change. It is so clear that there are many examples which we can quote over this, that we in the past banned several companies of China from doing business in India. So this was a political decision and a legal decision many a times. This change um, have a direct impact on organization because without considering this factor, political and legal factor, you cannot function in any country. Now these multinationals which are present in multiple nations having different culture, different political system, different political thought process and different legal requirements. If you have to stay competitive or stay in that market, you have to understand the political change and legal changes. Like if we talk about India, so these multinationals, the entry of these multinationals in India was very tough 15 years back because the political and legal requirement was such. But now with every next decade, we are more, I would say, open, and we have relaxed the entry terms and conditions and legal requirements or paper requirements of the multinationals. So the organization changes because the political requirement changes, like the decision of demonetization, and also the uh, the banks, the RBI has stopped the circulation and usage of rupees 2000 note denomination. Uh, these political changes have effect on the organization. The next one is demographic. See, generally demography is basically the study of population and the factors related with population. So a change in work demography might require the organization change in culture. For instance, a one company built and grew their business around door-to-door cosmetic sales with the stay-at-home wife and mother as their primary frontline employees. So when more women entered the workforce in 9 to 5 jobs, Avon had to shift the gear and find new ways to get their products in front of their customer. So now most of their customers are at job. They are not at home. And stay at home wife and mother are not their employees because they are now working full time. So they had to look at some other way how they deliver their product to the customer. So these were the external factors. Now let's talk about the internal factors. These factors reside inside the company. These factors are triggered from inside factors only. The first one is change in managerial personnel. So when these management people changes, when there is new manager, so each new manager brings his ideas and way of working in the organization. The relationship, more particularly in formal one, change because of change in managerial position. Because old managers are replaced by new manager, and these new managers are not working like the previous manager. They have different way. So this also changes the organization. The second factor is deficiency in existing organization. The organization feels that there are several deficiencies in organizational arrangement and process. So in order to handle these deficiencies, they need to change. So these deficiencies may be in the form of unmanageable span of management, a large number of managerial levels, lack of coordination between various departments, obstacles in communication, lack of uniformity in policy decision, and many more. The next point is nature of the workforce. The nature of the workforce is changing over time. Because of the workforce diversity, different work values have been expressed by different generations. For example, workers who are in the age group of 50 and more, they value loyalty to their employees. Whereas workers in their mid 30s to 40s are loyal to themselves only. And the youngest generation of workers, they are loyal to their own career. So the nature of workforce is changing, so the organization has to change. Another factor is to avoid the developing inertia. Inertia is inflexibility of the firm. So organization wants to avoid inertia, and that is why they change. The conscious manager take into account this view of the organization, that the organization should be dynamic, because any single method is not the best tool for management every time. So this is also important factor, internal factor. Along with this, when the management changes, when there are acquisition and mergers, when there are strategic alliances, these changes also trigger organizational change. If one firm has been acquired by a bigger firm, so their structure and hierarchy, everything will be changed according to the new firm. So that also triggered the change. So to summarize, the change in organization is triggered by two categories: external forces and internal forces. Since no organization can evit change, it is inevitable. So they now have to understand how they will introduce the change, how they will collect the resources to implement the change, and how smooth they can make the process of change for employees so that the resistance is minimum and the change which is intentional solve the purpose of the change. So this is all for this topic, and let's meet in another session with another unit. Thank you.